What's up? You know what? I thought it was time to do another tier list. So, first off, thank you for those that have already showed up. I see Cody, I see Tour Bus already in the chat. Thank you very much. I don't stream an awful lot on this channel. I've been trying to kind of correct that by doing that a little bit more often. So, still working on trying to build like a streaming audience. But we did some pretty cool stuff yesterday for Valentine's Day. We reviewed, I say we because it was myself and Colonel Chubbs. Go check him out. He's got some pretty good stuff. We reviewed My Bloody Valentine, the original from '81, and Valentine from 2001. So it was pretty cool. Interesting stream. But today we're going to do another tier maker. Now, like I said, last time we did this, I did slashers. So this time I figure let's go ahead and do the other side of that equation. And what is a slasher without his ultimate desire, the final girl? He just can never seem to get her. Well, sometimes. But I guess we'll talk about that as this. Oh, thank you, Cody. You like the stream. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, spread the word, folks. Let everyone know I'm live. Like I said, I don't really do this a whole lot. I'm trying to correct that. But with that said, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start ranking the final girls of slasher and other departments of horror. Because as you're looking at this list right here, I see you've probably taken a gander at it by now. You'll notice that there's maybe one or two, that maybe three that don't necessarily fall into the category of a slasher survivor girl or a final girl, but they are that nonetheless. Thank you, Tour Bus. I appreciate that. So yeah, Cody, we're gonna find out, because yes, this is my personal opinion. Just want to go ahead and put that out there for those watching, for those that are going to watch this later. My own personal opinion, based on that and that alone. I guess you'll become more acquainted with my qualifications for what makes a good final girl as the stream goes on. But let's jump in. Let's go ahead and do this. So the very first, and I'm just going to go down the list. This is in no particular order here. I uploaded all these images at random on Tier Maker when I was creating this. So this is in no particular order. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with the first on the list, which is Sidney Prescott from the Scream franchise. So now, those of you who watch this channel probably already have an idea that I'm a little bit biased towards a couple of franchises, and this is one of them. This is one of the formative horror films that I watched in Scream, that kind of got me into horror in the mid-90s. So I love Neve Campbell. I'm a fan of her work even outside of Scream, with like Wild Things and stuff like that. I've always liked her as an actress. I love the character of Sidney Prescott, because unlike a lot of the situations you're going to see on this list here, she's one of the rare instances where we get not only the same character, but the same actress portraying that character fully throughout the franchise, never missing an installment, never being absent from the story. The franchise is literally her story, from the original all the way to the one we're going to be getting in January of 2022. It's her story, and she has a really well done arc over that story. Another thing I think she can say, as far as being a final girl, that a lot of the other people on this list can't say, is that it's never just been one individual person coming after her. If we're being honest, Jamie Lee Curtis has survived, Michael Myers how many times, but she never really had to watch her 6 as well as her 12. With Sidney Prescott, these are typically in all but one movie, 2 killers simultaneously coming after her. I think the total number of Ghostface now in the films is 7. 7 different people have wanted her dead. She has somehow outlasted all 7 of them. And for these reasons, and many more that I could probably take up the remainder of this stream discussing, I'm ready to rank Sidney Prescott, and I don't think it's going to be much of a surprise where I'm going to put her. Cody says, yes, Sidney is one of those awesome female characters. I definitely agree with that. Tour Bus, especially because she always kicks the killer's ass. She does. If it happens to be happenstance, or if she just takes control, she always ends up kicking some major ass. So not going to be a big shocker here. That's S tier right there. Sidney Prescott is S tier. She may not have been one of the original final girls, coming 20 years after I think the term roundabout was created, or the trope was introduced, I guess I should say. But man, if that's not, like, if you think final girl and you're a horror slasher fan, a horror fan, this name has to come up, and it's got to be at the top of your list, regardless of how you feel about the franchise. If you really break it down, I think Scream 3 was filmed here in Michigan. You know what? I think there was some stuff for Scream filmed in Michigan, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's S tier. I mean, if I've ever seen S tier, Sidney Prescott's S tier on the final girl tier list here. So moving on, next we have, and you'll notice I have a couple of final girls here from the Friday the 13th franchise, because like I said, unlike Scream, Jason has kind of been after a lot of people. He doesn't have one major goal or one major target overall in the franchise. I guess the closest thing that franchise really ever came to having something like that would have been a final guy in Tommy Jarvis, who I believe was involved in 3 of the films, all different actors every time, by the way. So up next, we're talking about Tina Shepard from Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. So why this is actually interesting is, unlike many, if I think any of the final girls on this list, Tina Shepard actually has supernatural abilities. Usually, it's the normal, average, everyday female facing off against some type of otherworldly supernatural being. But in this instance, you almost get kind of like a Jason versus Carrie scenario, which is kind of like the joke title that I believe was kicked around. Um, Hatman, you're actually watching Friday 7 right now. Well, might I say, excellent choice, sir. Excellent choice, sir. So yeah, it's kind of Jason versus Carrie in a way. So yeah, Tina Shepard. This character has telekinetic abilities. I think it's safe to say she whooped Jason's ass, unlike anyone has before. Um, I think the only competition she would have is someone that I did not include in this list, that being the K unit robot from Jason X. But I didn't include her because I didn't think it was very fair, if we're being honest. So Tina Shepard, a short-lived character, only existed in the Jason universe in that one film. I can't really say as the character is extremely likable, but in a film with very unlikable characters, which is pretty much all of them, I'd say she's probably the most sympathetic. She's got some really cool superpowers, which nobody on this list has. But I don't see her being brought up as one of the upper echelon survivor girls who have kind of been in film after film or have really their name is just ingrained in the franchise as the antagonist, if you get what I'm saying. So with that said, there's pros and cons here, but I think where I'm going to land Tina Shepard, I'm going to land her for now. I'm having a little difficulty. I'm going to tell you guys where I'm having this difficulty. I don't think the character is too memorable, and I don't think that she stands out unless we talk about the superpower thing. That's really the only thing I think she's got going for her. Yeah, you don't hear her Cody. You don't hear her brought up in that same conversation with a lot of these characters. But simply having a superpower is actually pretty cool. However, the character like murders her own father at the beginning. I know he's probably not a great guy, but then she summons him later to dispose of Jason. It's very weird. I don't know. Superpowers are cool, but they only get you so far. We're going B tier here with Tina Shepard. I think that's fair. I think it's fair. I think it's probably where a lot of people probably wouldn't have put her that high. But you can't discredit the fact that you have someone going up against Jason that actually can match him. So I give her that. But as far as a character and stuff, not really interesting. Was a one and done. It is what it is. So moving on, next is another one that I'm going to be very biased towards. But at the same token, just like with Sydney, I don't think that it's out of left field to say that Laurie Strode is S tier. Can we go ahead and confirm that right off the bat before we go into anything else? I mean, it's Laurie fucking Strode. It's Jamie Lee Curtis, the Scream Queen herself, in the quintessential role. You can talk about terror trains and prom nights all you want to, but at the end of the day, it's Halloween. I mean, let's be honest. It's the blueprint for every slasher flick that came after it to this day. And Laurie Strode is the blueprint for the final girl to this day. And of course, things change. Different tropes are introduced, different things are utilized to keep characters fresh. But once again, that blueprint is still there. Strode changes a lot in the sequels. Yeah, and that's the thing. We kind of get different looks at what universe this Strode ends up in. Like, there's so many different universes, there's so many different timelines, so to speak, in the Halloween franchise, where you can see Laurie turn into what she became in Halloween H2O, or what she became in Halloween 2018. So you get a lot of different vantage points of how things could possibly go. But at the end of the day, other than Resurrection, I think she's always won out for the day. And that's not canon anymore, apparently. So I think it goes without saying, folks. It's Jamie Lee Curtis, regardless of how you feel about her. She's the Scream Queen. It's Laurie Strode on top of that. Michael Myers, his main target, sometimes sister, sometimes not. You gotta rank her high. I mean, that's S tier Survivor girl. That's S tier final girl right there, all day, every day. So up next, we have yet another Friday the 13th final girl. Not only just another, but the original Friday the 13th final girl. Didn't really have an interaction with Jason until part two, if you believe the boat turning over scene is a hallucination or whatever. But she went up against Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, and was I'm thinking here. I'm pretty sure she was the only survivor in that film. I don't recall any other major character making it out alive of that. So even with your Laurie Strodes, you of course Sam Loomis survives as well. Even with your Sidney Prescott, you've got your Dewey Gale, kind of your hanger-ons that survive through these sequels. Not so much with Alice Hardy. She was literally the only one left, the last person standing. And I mean, it's a classic final girl. It really is. Once again, didn't hold up so well against Jason in the sequel. She's in it for about, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes before Jason puts an ice pick through her head and kind of ends. But she's one of the few Friday the 13th final girls to appear in the next film. I mean, honestly, is she the only one? Can anyone think of someone else? Like I said, Tommy Jarvis, obviously, if we're talking final guys here, but I can't think of anyone else who survived one movie and appeared in the next one. I don't know. Maybe I'm blanking here, but I think it's safe to say that that Alice is a classic final girl, and we should probably have a little respect for that. She took down Mrs. Voorhees, and I guess inadvertently kind of caused the rise of Jason. So, interestingly enough, never really thought about it that way, but interestingly enough, I think I'm gonna place Alice. She's classic. She's classic. I'm gonna give her A tier. I'm gonna give her A tier. Mostly because that is, Friday the 13th, for fuck's sake. It's a classic final girl. She didn't do so well against Jason himself, but who amongst us probably would have? I think it's fair. Anyway, so up next, this is one of the ones that I was referencing at the beginning of the stream, and that is that there are a handful of these women on this list that really aren't necessarily slasher final girls. And Clarice Starling is one of them. She's one that has dealt with multiple psychopaths, I guess most notably Hannibal Lecter, Buffalo Bill. Interestingly enough, they I believe CBS just started a show just this past week called Clarice, following the events of Silence of the Lambs. The pilot was really well done. I very much enjoyed it. And I'm going to be watching next week. And that's, for me, coming from me, that's kind of high praise because I'm not much of a TV guy. There are very few shows that I actively watch that are currently on that I want to see every week when they come out. So high praise from me, not that it's really worth anything, but I think I think it's a really good show. I'm ready to see where they go with it. Let's see. Cody said, I think it was rare they kill off a final girl in the next film at the time. Yeah, I'd have to agree. I can't really think of any other instance of that happening. But honestly, I appreciate that, even if it's just a cameo. The fact that she came back, that's cool to me. But Clarice Starling, as far as the films, which is just pretty much what I'm basing this on at this time, which would include Silence of the Lambs and Hannibal. I mean, it's a classic character. The character is a part of a film that won an Academy Award. Even though they want to call it horror, they still don't want to call it horror. Same with like Get Out. Anytime there's a horror film that wins an Academy Award, it becomes a thriller, as if that isn't, horror. I mean, let's be honest. But yeah, Clarice, I mean, she's gone up against. It's hard to say gone up against, but I guess like survived a mind probing of Hannibal Lecter, which is, if you read like Thomas Harris's books, they go a little bit more in depth. She's a really interesting character. I think she kind of rose to the occasion for sure when it came to Buffalo Bill in the final closing moments of Silence of the Lambs. Another pretty cool altercations with Hannibal in the film Hannibal. And once again, she's not played by the same actress in both movies. It's what Julianne Moore in Hannibal, Jodie Foster, of course, in Silence of the Lambs. But I think she's a memorable enough character, and I think a lot of people would consider her a final girl. I know I would anyway, because a lot of people do consider Hannibal Lecter, whether you want to call it horror or a thriller, a in the same vein as a lot of these other slasher antagonists. Um, you have a hard time with that movie. Which one specifically? Silence of the Lambs. It's it's pretty raw. Let's say that. Let's go with that word. Um, yeah, Jodie Foster was into the character. It shows, and I'll say I don't know the woman's name who they picked to play Clarice in the show on CBS, but I think she's done a pretty good job of it thus far. Once again, we're only one episode in, but I've watched an entire hour of her playing, or 40 something minutes of her playing this character, and already I'm liking where they're going with it. What's up, Colonel Chubbs? How goes it, man? I'm gonna stick Clarice here. I'm gonna put her in the B tier, and I'm gonna put her in the B tier because she's obviously very smart and intuitive, and she's gone face to face with some of the most memorable psychopaths in the history of film in Buffalo Bill and Hannibal Lecter. So, oh, you were talking about Silence of the Lambs. Yeah, it's raw. It's one of those raw movies, especially for a film in the early '90s that goes on to win an Academy Award for Best Picture. So, got to give it credit where it's due. Cody, I would definitely check out the show, man. If it's like CBS, so it shouldn't be too hard to find somewhere to watch for you. I definitely check it out. Give it a shot. If you're a fan of Silence of the Lambs, you'll probably enjoy it. So up next, we have another, in my estimation, a classic final girl. This is Sally Hardesty, the only survivor to walk out of Leatherface and Co.'s house at the end of the 1974 film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So here's another character who I feel probably deserves a little bit more recognition than what she gets. I think I'm one of these people that I really enjoyed her character as far as like in the context of what a survivor girl is, and just the general physical and mental anguish that she goes through to actually get away. And just that scene, which I'm using the picture here, as you might see, just that scene of her on the back of the truck as she's driving away, and she's obviously fucking lost it. She did a really good job of portraying the fact that, not only who her character was, but that slip into like maybe this chick's legitimately insane after surviving what she just survived. So sold it well to me. So I like the acting there. But as far as placing her, another thing I do, as you might have noticed, I take into consideration how well remembered these characters are, not just by the horror community, but by moviegoers in general. And like I said earlier, I think a lot of people outside of the horror community would know who Sidney Prescott or especially Laurie Strode is, probably even Clarice Starling on this list. But I don't know if they would know who Sally Hardesty is. She's another one and done. There's a small cameo from her in the fourth film, I'm wanting to say. Next Generation. Not 100% sure about that, but I think that's the one it is. But I don't even know if she's credited as Sally in that film or not, because there's a couple of other people from the first movie that are, their characters are dead that are also involved in that ending. So for Sally, as much as a fan as I am, of this character, it's like it's kind of hard to place her somewhere. She was going crazy during the filming too. Yeah, I know, right? Um, I think honestly, when you get down to it, it's a classic final girl for me. But She did kind of get lucky, if we're being honest. She's a good runner. Don't get me wrong. She's very good at running. But a lot of her escaping had to do with just ineptitude, I think, on the half of the Sawyers. So I am going to place her right there on the B tier. And I know I'm riding the fence, and the B tier is getting bigger and bigger, but that's going to change as we go on. So up next, we have another protagonist from the Halloween franchise, and the only child I have involved on this list. This is Jamie Lloyd from the, I guess, what's commonly referred to as the Thorn trilogy from Halloween 4, 5, and The Curse of Michael Myers, the sixth installment. So once again, the only child on this list, I think that speaks volumes of the fact that, because let's be honest, most of the time, especially in horror, when you have a child actor, they're pretty fucking annoying. They it usually gets bad. Let's just say that. It usually gets pretty irritating, and it usually leaves a sour taste in my mouth throughout the rest of the film. It's generally hard to watch. And I'm not shitting on child actors or anything, but it is what it is. Maybe the genre and child actors don't mesh well. I don't know. But what I do know is Danielle Harris, who portrays Jamie Lloyd, is an exception to this rule in my cranium. And that's because I actually enjoyed her character. And I actually enjoyed, even though I'll say they fucked the character over in Curse, where they recast. The new actress, J.C. Brandy, I believe her name was, looks way too old to be Jamie Lloyd in the timeline that we're in, given how many years have passed since Halloween 5. And, kills her in the first 10 or 15 minutes of the film, pretty brutally, too, which I don't know. I guess that takes away points as far as being a final girl, but it took 3 movies to get the job done. There's also some weird, questionable shit going on in that movie between Michael and her, too, which is better left unsaid. But I mean, I do give her credit as far as being one of those rare, unannoying child actors in a horror film. So, yeah, I'll agree with you there, Chubbs. Danielle Harris is beyond cool. Very amazing. And would return to the franchise, Halloween, that is, in Rob Zombie's remake and the sequel to that remake, which I have issues with those movies, especially the second one. But none of them have anything to do with Danielle Harris's performance in either one of those movies. So, nothing but good things to say about her. Specifically talking about Jamie Lloyd, though, I think the character was, I guess, the logical choice on where to go if you don't have Jamie Lee Curtis and you don't want to recast her, because, like I just said, recasting Jamie Lloyd didn't work out so well. So maybe that was a good idea. At that point in the franchise, they're doing a family thing with Michael. So I guess it made sense. Unless you were going to come up with a third sister, I guess this is really the way to go. But I really enjoy. There are a lot of instances with this character where you think something's cool is going to happen, and then it just doesn't. That's one of the big flaws, is like the end of Halloween 4. It looks like she's kind of taking up the mantle of Michael, murdering, or as we later would find out, I think her stepmom survived. In the same vein, Michael did his sister in 1963. So, and then they never cashed in on it. I'd even say the ending of Halloween 5 is kind of an exciting setup for a 6, but I don't think they really meshed very well with what they actually came up with. But as far as ranking her anywhere, I mean, obviously it's a little girl. She had a lot of help from people like Dr. Loomis, the police force. She was pretty much defenseless. But nevertheless, you've got that child character that you don't absolutely hate. So you end up cheering for her. And I think a lot of people did that. And I don't know. I think the Jamie character is okay. But at the end of the day, I think that's as much as I can give her as a C. Let's see. What's Cody saying here? Very good portrayal for a child. Yes. The backstory I had an issue with the most. Um, yeah, yeah, I feel you there. Um, but like I said, I try to be fair about this, but I really don't think that Jamie Lloyd is another one of those names that are going to come to people's minds when you're talking about Final Girls to just a movie going crowd. Um, sucks. You got to put her on the C tier. I'm not picking on the kid or anything. Well, she is a grown woman now, but it is what it is. So up next, we're going to be taking a look at Jess. I believe the last name was Bradford, if I'm not mistaken, in the film, but that is Jess from um, Silent Night, Deadly Night. So, or no, that's not Night, Deadly Night. Fuck me, Black Christmas. Wow. Now I'm starting to loop all the Christmas horror films in my head, trying to remember which one I was trying to bring up. Jess Bradford, I believe was her last name. Now, this is one that nobody's really going to bring up unless they're a real big fan of slasher flicks. I kind of included her because I just felt like she was one of those formative final girls. And I think a lot of people within the horror community are definitely gonna bring her up. So that's why I included her in this list. It's an interesting character. It's kind of a she kind of added an extra. I've always felt like Final Girls were very feminist characters because it's all about like taking this power back and coming out on top. But she kind of had an extra layer to it. And it was kind of like the whole deal with her boyfriend and the fact that keeping this baby as opposed to aborting the child. There's a cool little subplot there and some subtext that's pretty interesting that you don't really see out of a lot of films, especially from this time. And it's not one of those things that's really just like throwing an ideology in your face. It's just presenting it to you. So you'll notice not a lot of people have much of an issue or anything to say about those types of things. I would say, oh, you fucked those up too, Cody. I don't know what it is about like certain holiday themed movies. Sometimes they just get really jumbled up in my brain, and I'll calling one the other. So as far as Jess goes, though, I think the character and the actress did fair enough in the film. There was never any kind of follow up. Obviously, there were 2 remakes, but those get worse every single time they do one. But as far as this one, we're kind of left to assume at the end of the film that the antagonist is still in the house, the protagonist is defenseless, and that's kind of where we end. So it's kind of left up in the air if Jess even does survive her first and only encounter with Billy. And given the fact that it's a formative final girl from those formative years, but I'm just not very sure that looking at this list, I can rank her any higher than anybody else. So I'm sorry to all the fans of this movie, but I'm unfortunately going to have to rank her D tier. I already know there's some people out there that are either watching now or are going to be watching this later on that are already highly upset with some of my picks, but I think that one's going to actually piss somebody off. That's the first one that actually popped up that I was like, yeah, they may not like that. I don't know. So there are survivors and then there are fighters. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Who do we have up next? We have Kirsty Cotton of the Hellraiser franchise, who has appeared in, I believe, 3 out of the many, many, many entries in the Hellraiser franchise. Just first and foremost, just so everyone knows I'm not shitting on this franchise by saying what I'm about to say, I absolutely adore Hellraiser and its original sequel. I love Hellraiser 2. There are moments and there are pieces of the franchise that I like from there on, but nothing really that I ever enjoyed quite as much as the original 2. I think the last one they did was kind of probably one of the more, I think, impressive entries in quite some time. But as far as the Kirsty Cotton character, like I said, I think she's been involved in 3. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Someone let me know. I know it's no more than 4, but 3 I'm sure of films. I believe 1 was just a cameo, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Chubb says Kirsty is my top final girl because she wears someone else's skin to survive. Fucking A, right? Like that is some Walking Dead skinwalker suit through the herd type shit. Like that's you gotta have a lot of ovarian fortitude, I guess is a good way to put that. That's the first time I've ever had to create something like that, but that's what I'm gonna go with, folks. Um, yeah, I mean, as far as Kirsty, I think I think she's definitely gonna be at least B tier because, and I may go higher. And the reason I say this is because, I mean, Final Girls, how many of them can honestly say they've battled demons from hell? How many of them can say they've been inside the lament configuration? How many of them can say they've been chased by a giant dick and balls through a hallway? Not a lot of them can say that. Um, so yeah, I'll agree, Cody. Kirsty is awesome. I don't know if she is a very memorable character to, once again, the outside of the horror community, just your general movie going audience. If they made a Hellraiser remake and whoever they cast to play Kirsty, I don't think your general movie going audience is going to care that much. But as far as us and the, this horror community, quote unquote, definitely an awesome final girl. But I think what I'm going to do here is I am going to place Kirsty in the B tier. B tier. Riding the fence on it again. I think maybe had she been involved in more of these films and had they not gone off on such tangents and it had been a little bit more coherent, I probably would rank her A. But I think B is the best I can do for right now. Sorry, Chubbs. I apologize in advance. I know, like you just said, that's kind of your top. But maybe we can make this up in a different way. I don't know. Maybe you'll enjoy some of these other picks. So let's see. Cody says, I think she also guest appeared on Joe Bob Briggs last year. Did she? I may have missed that one. I have to go back and check that out. So up next, we have another final girl from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. This one being Stretch Brock, if I'm not mistaken, is her last name, from Texas Chainsaw 2. In some ways, I gotta say, as far I feel kind of like I do about Hellraiser for the Texas Chainsaw series. Like the first 2, I fucking love them, like adore them. And there's some moments and some pieces in later on in the franchise that I'd enjoy. Stretch is a high point for me as far as a final girl. I mean, like, especially being a young man as I was when I originally watched these movies. There's no denying it. I was very interested in Stretch. As was Leatherface, though. He was smitten, so maybe that kind of lended to her being able to escape. And she's literally at the end of this film the last person standing. I mean, everyone dies in this movie. Every antagonist, every protagonist, everyone's dead by the end of this movie. She's the last one standing, literally King Konging on top of a mountain, waving around a chainsaw, kind of pulling a Sally Hardesty. Has she lost it? Probably. But definitely she deserves that victory lap, that celebration that she took at the end. And most definitely, Cody. She's a great one. And I do have my own personal biases. Like I said, growing up, a young man was a big fan of the Stretch character. Also, I like the fact that she was playing Oinga Boinga, Nobody Lives Forever on her radio station. That was good. That's a good song. But yeah, I really do like her. I think that it was an entertaining character. Not so sure a lot of people, remember this character outside of the horror community, but this is my list. And I'm gonna go ahead and say she also cameoed in Texas Chainsaw 3. I think it was the one directly preceding this one. But at the end of the day, I can't just rank her high up the list on sex appeal alone and the fact that I'm very nostalgic for her. But I will go ahead and give her a fair C ranking, I believe. I think it's fair. I think ranking her any higher is just me being a fucking perv. So up next, who do we have here? I believe this is Lila Crane. This would be Marion Crane's sister from Psycho. Of course, Marion Crane being the who you think the film's going to be about. They kind of pull a scream with Drew Barrymore on you, knife her off in the first act of the film, and Lila, her sister, kind of becomes more the antagonist or protagonist, more the final girl of the film, so to speak. And even had a Sam Loomis character of her own at her side. Isn't that interesting? So let's see here. Lila, you know, I got to tell you, she even though she is the one who survives this film, definitely takes a backseat to Marion. I think as classic as Psycho is, that final girl trope, that character really hadn't become what it was gonna be at that point in time. And I think, once again, as classic as the movie is, I think just ranking final girls, ranking Lila probably isn't. She's probably not going to make it that high, honestly. You got to give her credit as far as being one of the classics. Her character existed before there was ever any kind of final girl idea floating around out there. So she's also an early formative character for that type of character. But like I said, a lot of times overshadowed by Marion Crane's character. Most people, if they're going to remember anyone besides Norman Bates from the Psycho films, it's probably going to be Marion. So for that, unfortunately, even though she did make it, I'm going to have to rank her a little low here. I'm sorry, Psycho fans. I apologize. That's a D tier final girl. My bad. Once again, want to reiterate, this is all just my opinion. Just my opinion. Yeah, that actually was a big shocker for the 60s, Cody. So up next, I wanted to include the Child's Play franchise. But you have the same problem with Friday the 13th as you do with Child's Play. You can't really talk final girls about those franchises quite as much because the overall protagonist is male in Andy Barclay. So later on in this franchise, we did finally get a female protagonist over the course of now 2 films. Soon to be 3, as I'm hearing. I guess we'll see what happens after this Chucky TV show. Cody says, yeah, shower scene is the most talked about when it comes to Psycho. Oh, yeah, for sure. Most definitely. And the only 2 people in that scene, Norman and Marion. So without a doubt, those characters overshadow, rather, Lila. But like I said, we did finally get a final girl character in Nika. In the last 2 Child's Play Chucky films. And you've got a final girl here who, and I don't, recall this happening before. You've seen characters like we talked about Sally Hardesty earlier. Her brother was in a wheelchair. But Nika, actually, as the final girl, being in a wheelchair, I think it was pretty cool. Representation for everybody. I enjoyed it. And she's actually not only a good character, and can be a really nice person, but she's also a really bad bitch, wheelchair or not. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think after watching Curse and Cult of Chucky, I am really interested to see where the Nika character goes from here. So I like her. I'm already ready for her and Andy to team up, hopefully, in the next installment. I don't care if these movies are coming direct to Blu-ray and 4K. I'm fine with that. The last 2 Child's Play movies have been really good. She's been a part of them. So, so far, so good. I'm going to rank her C tier. I enjoy the Nika character. Yeah, it's different, Cody, and that's what I like. I like different. Not that there's anything wrong with using a formula as or a blueprint, as we've talked about in the stream, but it's always nice to sprinkle in, pepper in something different. So up next, this one is very interesting to me. This is Grace from Ready or Not. Now, I was late to the party with Ready or Not. Did not give it a fair shake when it originally came out. Only when I had the first earliest rumblings of who was going to direct the new Scream film, that being the team of Radio Silence, that I decided to start looking at some of their other work. And the first one I looked at was Ready or Not. And holy shit, I was blown away by how bloody and gory it is, by how funny it is, by how tense the film can be at points in time. It's a total package of emotions to watch this movie. I really enjoyed it. What's up, Druid? Welcome to the stream. Really loved Grace's character. You know, she was smart when she needed to be. The character was, you know, goofy and in an enjoyable way in times of levity. And could really just kick some fucking ass at the end of the day. I compare her to someone else that's on this list, that being Erin from You're Next, of women who were just really thrust into a fucking insane situation and managed. You see the evolution in the movie of them, you know, it's like bewilderment to accepting this is what's happening to like, I've got to get the fuck out of here. I got to make it. And she, to me, is a quintessential like final girl character. Even though this movie is very modern, it only came out a few years ago. I got to rank her pretty high. And son of a bitch, do you recall an ending to any film with a final girl where she just comes out soaked in blood? You know, wearing remnants of her wedding dress, which her wedding was yesterday, and just lights up a cigarette. And it's literally, it's fucking awesome. It's cool. It is what it is. I enjoy it. I love the movie. I like the character. Hate me if you want to. Grace is A tier. That shit's awesome. Quite enjoy the character. Quite enjoy the movie. And if Wes isn't around to do a Scream, a 5th installment, I trust these Radio Silence guys, especially after watching what they brought to the table in Ready or Not. But yeah, love the character of Grace. Love the movie. Good shit. So up next, and this one's going to be fairly open and shut. I think when you're talking Ripley from Alien, she's one of the biggest, baddest ass kickers in the history of final girls. But just where to rank her is the only thing I have. You know, a lot of people will pop out and they'll tell me this is sci-fi, this isn't horror, she's not a final girl. I get your opinion, get my opinion. She's being chased by murderous aliens. All right. So yeah, I don't do the whole conflating. You know, sci-fi bleeds over into horror and vice versa. The same with these psychological thrillers. It happens. They all share a common space. But yeah, Ripley kicks ass. Get away from her, you bitch. That's all I gotta say. So it's one of the greatest lines in the history. It's hard to place her. Like I kind of want to. I'll be honest with you. It's upper echelon right now. The lowest I'm going is B tier. You know what? Scratch that. The lowest I'm going is A tier. She's for sure S or A tier quality here. So I'm kind of having a moment where I just need to put this all together and make a decision. Once again, she's definitely a character that people are going to remember in the general movie-going audience, not just the people that are fans of Alien or fans of these types of films. She's going to be remembered as somebody who she's a memorable character for any audience. You don't have to go specific in any kind of genre or anything like that. So let's see. Cody says the first I consider horror, but second is more action. Yeah, and that's kind of it's like you watch the first one. It's like I consider it like a sci-fi horror, And then as the series goes on, at certain points, it does feel like more of a horror action type thing. So I feel you. Yeah, man, Ripley's an icon, for sure. And I think I got to do it. I think that's S tier, folks. I think Ripley's S tier. I don't think anyone's really going to challenge that too much, right? Um, Fuck yeah, she kicks a lot of ass. So up next we have Julie James from the I Know What You Did Last Summer franchise. Now, out of that, there are 3 films in this franchise. She appears in the first 2. The third one, you can write it off. It's garbage. Bad. You don't even want to be involved in this shit. You don't want it. I don't want it. It's better off if we just don't even talk about it. So Julie James's character is in I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. She does survive the first film, even though it looks as if she doesn't. It was shown in the sequel to be Night Terrors or whatever. So the same thing happens in the second one. It ends the exact same way. So it's more than likely some type of night terror or whatever. I'm pretty sure the dude was dead in this one. Once again, she's dealing with an ordinary flesh and blood killer. Not that that's always marks against, because as you see, Sidney Prescott up there in the S tier. But in a lot of ways, Julie James is a Sidney Prescott knockoff, and I'm not saying that to be an asshole, but it is what it is. Certain movies come along and they set a precedent, and Halloween and Scream are definitely 2 of those. And people blueprint off, or they work from that same blueprint. It is what it is. But even though she, I suppose, at least by the way I'm reading it, survived both her encounters with the fisherman. I don't know if she's a very memorable, iconic character. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I think it's pretty fair. Maybe it's nostalgia because I grew up in the 90s, but I'm going to put her C tier. Part of me thinks she should be in the D tier. Really does. You know what? Yeah, I'm sorry, Julie. You got to go D tier. Kind of a hard decision there, but at the end of the day, the character, I can't say that I was impressed with the character arc. I can't say that I really enjoy Julie as a character. It is what it is. We'll move on here. Druid says C tier for Julie. I don't know, man. I enjoy the first 2 I Know What You Did Last Summer movies, but I just don't know, man. I just don't know if she's more memorable for the goofy moments of that franchise than anything else. Like, it's the screaming to the skies. What are you waiting for? So I'm going to have to slip her into the D tier, even though I have a lot of nostalgia for 90s slashers. I'm sorry. It is what it is. So up next, we got Susie Bannion from Suspiria, which is actually a really well done film by Dario Argento. If you haven't watched any Dario Argento stuff, what the fuck are you doing with your life? It's very different. Check it out if you haven't. But Suspiria is a very interesting movie. She's not going up against your flesh and blood types. It's more of like a witch coven with this one. Really enjoyed the film. Even the remake wasn't that bad, I didn't think. I thought it was decently done. It's hard to remake a movie that I would consider a classic. And for sure, I consider Suspiria a classic. But at the end of the day, not much really to say about her. Honestly, it wasn't like a franchise. It wasn't something that was going on and on and on and on, even with or without her. Technically part of a trilogy, with other stories, but yes, part of the trilogy. Kind of went that anthology approach, I guess, more or less. But I would have to put her, just out of sheer respect for Argento. I don't hate this character, but I don't think she stands out too much. But I do think I appreciate her character more than everyone I'm looking at here on that D tier. So I'm going to put Banyan right here in the C tier. She knows what she's got to do. She figures it out. She gets it done. You know, it is what it is. I think she's pretty much an open and closed case with me. I think C is fair. So up next here we have another one that I thought people would probably give me a little backlash for having her on here, because this is from the Blair Witch Project. I love that movie. I know a lot of people don't, but this is Heather Donahue of the Blair Witch Project. Now, you may be saying, Brand, everyone dies in the Blair Witch Project, supposedly. I mean, that's what we're meant to believe. Well, I mean, she was the last to go. She was the final girl. There was a witch involved, supposedly. You know, I think these are final girl material. I think that's what's happening here. What's up, local legends? Welcome to the stream. Welcome to the stream. We're just making a tier list of some final girls here. Some that people may not agree deserve to be on the list, but it's my list. It's my opinions. So let's see here. We're talking Heather Donahue from Blair Witch Project. A lot of people really hate this character. Like, really hate this character. Now, I included her because I enjoy this movie. I can't say I'm a huge fan of her character. For all intents and purposes, she did not survive, as far as we know, the original film. And was only mentioned in the 2016 sequel they made. Never mentioned the original sequel. So here's what I got for Heather. I am sorry, and as much as I love this movie, Heather, you're awful. D tier. You know, and I don't hate the crying, frothing at the mouth, snot running down the nose scene, because I think it's pretty impactful in a way where it's like she knows she has brought these people with Mike and Josh into the woods. She has fucked up, and there is something supernatural happening, or at the very least, incredibly scary happening. And there's a good chance that they're all going to die, and it's kind of her fault. So I appreciate that scene more than a lot of people do. It's just the constant like bickering that she has with all the other characters. It makes them hard to enjoy sometimes. That's really my only big gripe with the film. Other than that, I really enjoyed the Blair Witch Project. But as far as final girls go, I'm sorry, Heather. I think you are where you belong. So Druid Lover says, in Blair Witch, yeah, the movie kind of sucked, but she did her part well and created the level of anxiety needed to carry the film, in my honest opinion. I agree. That's kind of what I'm getting at as well. I definitely agree with that. She, as far as Heather Donahue, the actor, because they used the actors and actresses' same names, you know, where they were trying to promote this as a real life occurrence. The actress Heather Donahue, I think, did a really good job. Nothing against her or her performance. I just think the character was kind of written to be somewhat unlikable. But I think she did good. No quarrels with her. You know, as a final girl, I don't see her ranking above anybody else from C or above. Let's see here. All right. Next up, we have Nancy, aka who is she played by? Heather Langenkamp. Nancy Thompson from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. She was, of course, involved in the original. She was involved in the third Dream Warriors, where her character dies. And then she was involved in Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which is, kind of a reboot, kind of a, everything that came before was a movie. This is real life. Now it's actually happening. Very meta kind of stuff that Wes Craven was doing in the mid-90s. So when it comes to Nancy, I mean, you gotta first and foremost think she's been in 3 films. She's played herself, and she's played the Nancy character twice. Maybe things didn't go so great for her in the third one, but it was kind of like her actions that helped a new generation be able to survive. So it was like the ultimate sacrifice type thing. So we've seen the character smart. She's figured out some shit that a lot of people wouldn't have figured out about this dream demon, Freddy Krueger, pulling him out of the dream, taking away his powers by not giving him the fear. And like I said, helping a new generation get their shit together so they can battle him. I'd say that's pretty badass. I'd say I've always had an appreciation for this character. And for me right now, it's only trying to decide between S tier or A tier. I'm looking at the S tier, and I'm seeing like repeated appearances in a franchise to where that franchise is pretty much about you. There have been a lot of instances in Nightmare on Elm Street where that franchise was not about her. 2, 4, 5, Freddy's dead. There's a lot, but at the same time, this character, not necessarily the same actress, is involved in 4 of the films in the franchise. So I'm a little bit torn on where to put her here. Cody says Nancy definitely has to be top 5 best final girls. Yes, I would agree with that. And like I said, the only issue I'm having at this point is trying to place her in S or A. It's actually kind of difficult for me. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to put S tier for Nancy Thompson. I think taking on a otherworldly dream demon former child abuser is pretty noble work, and she's done it quite well. And once again, being able to offer an antagonist like Freddy Krueger a protagonist that can reappear, that played by the same actress 3 out of 4 times until they remade it, when you kind of have to recast at that point, I got to give that a thumbs up. Yeah, right, Chubb. She made Booby Trap. She legitimately, like, how she Kevin McAllistered Freddy Krueger's ass in his initial outing at that. He wasn't even goofy and shit yet. Wasn't throwing out a whole lot of one-liners, maybe a couple in the first one. But yeah, Freddy was a little bit more menacing and more serious in that first one too. So I think all these things have to be considered. S tier for Nancy Thompson. And we have 2 more final girls left on this list. And one of them, which we're about to talk about right now, is yet another from the Friday the 13th franchise. This is Jenny Field, I believe was her last name, from Friday the 13th Part 2. I like Jenny. She is one of, if not my favorite final girl in the entire Friday the 13th franchise. I love the fact that she's brave when she needs to be, and she knows how to retreat when she needs to. She's smart. It's not like a pride thing at all at any point ever. It's all a survival thing. I love the fact that she has a background in like child psychology, and kind of on some levels understands what Jason is before anybody else even would have been able to confirm or deny this. Even before the general movie-going audience even understood fully what he was. She kind of served as someone who could unknowingly explain the character of Jason to us, which is kind of rare out of a final girl. So I really enjoy her. I don't think it's hard to say here. I'm giving her A tier. I think out of all the Friday the 13th final girls, especially not having psychic and telekinetic abilities, she held her own probably the best against Jason. Now, granted, this is probably one of the weaker incarnations of Jason. But with that said, it's still Jason fucking Voorhees. So props to you, Jenny. A tier. Cody says she is my fave final girl of that franchise. And it's hard for me to disagree. It really is. A lot of people want to say Chris Higgins, and I'm not saying there's anything, I have anything against the Chris Higgins character, but I don't think there's any competition in my mind between those two as far as that a final girl goes. It's Jenny all day for me. So one final girl that we have to put somewhere here on this tier maker, and that is Erin from You're Next. Now, like I said earlier, I compare this character to Grace, who I put in the A tier from Ready or Not, as somebody, and even more than Grace, Erin is bad as fuck. She really beats the brakes off of these Wyatt-looking motherfuckers in this movie. Definitely enjoyed it. What a transformation, because at the very beginning of this film, at least I look at this character and go, you know, I'm not sitting here thinking that she's going to be capable of doing some of the shit that she does later on in this film. So she's just an action, the definition of a badass. Fan-fucking-tastic. Love the character. Love the movie. Torn if I'd like to see a sequel or not. They could easily fuck that up. But as far as that one goes, I watch it all the time. Absolutely love it. And I'm looking at this knowing where I'm going to put her. And I didn't plan this, I swear to you. But everything's even now. So anybody with like OCD, you probably love this tier maker because I inadvertently put 4 on each row here. And that's my list. That is my list. Cody says, your neck surprised me how good it was. You too? You too? Because I got to be real with you. I went in thinking I just want to go watch a good horror movie. And, you know, I didn't have high hopes or high expectations for it. Just kind of one of those things. I wanted to go to the theater and check it out. Time to watch a good horror movie. And son of a bitch, if it wasn't above and beyond anything I kind of expected it may be. So, yeah, I agree with you there, Cody. But there's the list. So D tier, we've got Jess, Lila, Julie James, Heather Donahue. On C tier, we have Jamie Lloyd, Stretch, Nika, and Susie Banyan. On B tier, we've got Tina Shepard, Clarice Starling, Sally Hardesty, and Kirsty Cotton. On A tier, we've got Alice Hardy, Grace, Jenny, and Aaron. And, of course, on S tier, we've got Sydney Prescott, Laurie Strode, Ellen Ripley, and, of course, Nancy Thompson. So I'm good now. I think that's I'm satisfied with the way this thing turned out. I hope you all are as well. For those who joined me, I appreciate that very much. If you're going to watch this later on, I appreciate that as well. But in any event, leave it a like if you've enjoyed it. If you haven't already and you're a fan of horror films, a subscription may be in your future. I think, like I said, if you like horror movies, it's pretty much what we do here. So give me a sub. Come check me out again. Also, down in the description section, if anyone is interested, there are some links to follow me on I think Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And it's directly to a kind of a branded Bloody Breakdown accounts where all we talk about is horror. So if that's something you're into, which I hope you are because you're here, then those are something for you to check out as well. There's also a couple of ways to support the channel down there if you're interested. I would be greatly appreciative. Obviously, no obligation to do so, but it is appreciated. So with that said, I want to thank everyone for joining me here. I want to thank everyone, like I said, who's going to watch this later. Haven't really built up much of a live streaming type crowd yet, but I do appreciate those of you who did show up. I had a good time. I hope you all did as well. I'm Brand from Bloody Breakdown. Thanking you all once again. Specific, and you know what? I'm gonna call names out because I appreciate you guys joining me. So that's Druid Lover 1, Cody Ray 119, Colonel Chubbs, Local Legends. Let's see, there's a couple other people in here I think earlier on. Tour Bus, yeah. Thank you all for joining me for the live stream, and thank you all for watching later. I'm Brand from Bloody Breakdown. We'll catch you all next time.